The fact of the matter is that it's very easy to be accused of stealing something from a grocery store. Who goes to a grocery store to come up? You go to a grocery store if you're poor. If you're stealing, you know what I mean? If you go, that's what you go to a grocery store if you don't have enough money to buy your food. Okay, let's start there. But it's very easy. And there's a personal story there connecting me with this sort of thing, right? My own brother was accused of stealing, and he did not steal. He never would steal, never has stolen. They tried to say that he would seen in the past with the self-checkout thing. And he was like, please show me one example. Please, I'm begging you, show me one example of that. He's like, I am so afraid because I live in this black skin that you will assume that I'm stealing, that I make sure that I wave it over very slowly so that it beeps loudly. So the guy standing there knows that I'm not doing anything funny. I know how I look to you. I would never do that. The fact that you're accusing me of it is so hurtful because I've lived my whole life so that I could have the conversation if it ever came up and say without a shadow of a doubt that I've never in my life stolen anything, certainly not from a grocery store. Why would I ever do that? I'm comfortable. Now, this woman was accused of stealing in a grocery store. And I want to point out at a recent post from Sean King suggested that she was misidentified and that she, in fact, was not the person that the original people thought was stealing. But she's in the parking lot, right? We've well established on this show that people who look like us can be and often are afraid of dealing with the police.
Well, Ramses, why on earth
I got to say it again. I guess I do.
Would they be afraid of dealing with
let me start here, Q. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So let me start here. For most of the stories that we talk about, these are unarmed people. If we do talk about an armed individual whose life was taken by the police, remember that owning a gun in this country is not a crime in and of itself. There is the Second Amendment, and it applies to all the citizens, including the black ones. Okay, so having a gun should not necessarily be a death sentence for black people. It often is, but we're talking about an unarmed black person, right? Where again, their only crime is the sin, or their only threat is the skin, is what I'm trying to say. So when police show up and they actually do have tools whose only designation is to end a life, and historically, the relationship between black community and the police has been only a strained relationship. Remember, the Black Panthers were born out of police violence. The protest of 2020, born out of police violence. The riots in Detroit, born from police violence. This is
riots in South Central Los
everywhere.
Angeles,
police violence. Rodney King, yes. Police violence. We're not talking about political disenfranchisement. We're not talking about we can't vote. We're not talking about, oh, they lynched one of us, so we're gonna, no, this is police violence. Time and 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 time again. Okay. So black people, there's a deep-seated mistrust of the police. So when they show up, we know they can get away scot-free with what we consider to be murder, and they have the tool that allows them to do it. Then naturally we would be afraid. I don't want to get out of the car. I'm pregnant. Y'all going to kick me, beat me, hurt me. No, I didn't steal anything. I'm not getting out of the car. I'm going to go somewhere where I feel safe. Any creature on this planet with a nervous system can do one of two things when provoked. Those two things, and they might sound familiar, include fight or flight. Okay? That's what happens when you get scared.
And just so we're clear, both of those responses are natural.
Yep. Any creature, not just black people,
not
have
specific to people.
No.
Definitely not specific to black people.
No. It is a condition of being alive, having a nervous system and a brain. The function of a brain is to allow movement, and a nervous system helps facilitate the brain's commands. Okay. So anything with those components has the ability to fight or flee from danger. Okay. And if it's the police's responsibility, has historically been to endear itself to the community. The community can't exist without the police. The police cannot exist without the community.
And
so it is incumbent upon them to establish the tone of the relationship. Go ahead.
For people, sometimes people tune in the middle of a conversation and they're wondering, what are we talking about? So just to remind you guys, a young lady in Ohio, I believe, was murdered.
Yeah.
A pregnant Black woman.
Takia Young, 21 years old.
Her and her unborn child murdered by police officers because they could. She was suspected of shoplifting.
Yes. Now,
and we've seen violent killing spree suspects that don't look like her pursued,
live and well,
pursued, arrested, fed, got a much greater outcome than she was allowed to have.
Now, I want to read the rest of this. After the shot, the officers run alongside the car, yelling at the driver to stop. Obviously, she was dead/dying by that point. The car rolls into a sidewalk between two brick columns and into a building. Officers call for backup and break the window to reach the driver, who appears to be slumped over to one side. Brian Steele, an executive vice president of the Fraternal Order of Police, Capital City Lodge number 9, said, "A weapon is not just a firearm. A weapon is also a 2,000-pound vehicle that somebody puts in gear and is driving at you." Okay. So they're trying to spin the story like she was driving in the path of the officer, completely ignoring the video where she turned the wheel to the right, where the officer's standing on the left and is trying to move out of the way of the officer, right? But this is what the police do. Quote, "I understand why it could be justified, but again, I don't make that decision," Steele told reporters. I understand why it could be justified, implying the shooting is justified. The police say the officers haven't waived their rights as victims. They're treating the officers as victims, so you can't see their face. Their information is still hidden.
Officers as victim is insane.
Yeah. Young's family said in a statement, "Takia was a beacon of love, strength, and energy to all who knew her. Her tragic passing has left a void that words can't describe. We feel bad for her 2 sons, and then now obviously the baby has passed too. And unfortunately, that's the story of Takia Young."